Cressida Harrow had been invited to the glasshouse to identify a fern, not to hear a duke announce that he would never marry her. The distinction mattered. One task concerned the arrangement of veins beneath a leaf, the shape of a sorus, and the precise place from which a specimen had been taken. The other concerned a rumor Cressida had neither begun nor believed, spoken before 30 people who had come to Merehaven for the midsummer display and stayed because Lady Honoria Vetch had promised an announcement. Heat gathered beneath the high panes. Orange trees stood in green tubs along the tiled walk, and the scent of damp earth mingled with perfume and beeswax. At the center table lay Cressida's drawings, her packets of seed, and a small wooden case containing the last living frond of a fern her father had brought from the Western Islands. Lady Honoria rested 2 gloved fingers on that case, as if she already owned it. "Miss Harrow has enjoyed unusual access to Merehaven," she said. Her smile travelled easily among the guests. "One understands how a young woman might mistake professional indulgence for a more permanent preference." Cressida looked first at Honoria's fingers, then at Nathaniel Wycliffe, Duke of Merehaven. He stood beneath the iron gallery in a dark coat, tall enough to make the hanging vines seem low. His expression had the composed severity people called strength, when it belonged to a rich man. He knew why Cressida had come. He knew she had spent 6 months cataloguing the unmarked specimens his missing sister had sent home. He also knew Honoria's solicitors intended to petition for letters patent over a fever preparation derived from the Harrow collection. Yet he looked at the guests, not at Cressida. "There need be no mistake," he said. "I will never marry you, Miss Harrow." Silence fell with almost comic completeness. Somewhere above them, water ticked from a pipe into the fern bed. Nathaniel expected tears, indignation, perhaps gratitude, when he later explained that a public refusal would end the gossip. Cressida saw all 3 expectations in the slight lift of his chin. She closed her portfolio. "That is fortunate," she said, "because I have never asked you." A gentleman near the palms coughed into his hand. Honoria's fingers tightened on the specimen case. Cressida tied the green ribbon around her drawings, gathered the seed packets, and left on the table only the Duke's own catalogues. Her hands were steady. She had learned steadiness from watching her mother turn 1 insufficient coin into 3 insufficient meals. "Miss Harrow," Nathaniel said. She paused. "Lady Honoria's petition will be lodged in 3 days," she told him. "It describes my father's preparation, my illustrations, and a specimen that disappeared from this house last winter. If you want the Harrow name removed from your family's difficulties, you may begin by ensuring it is not removed from Harrow work." Honoria laughed softly. "A recipe used by village wives is hardly a scientific property. Then you will have no objection to withdrawing your claim." The smile vanished. Cressida turned to Nathaniel again. "If you wish my help, Your Grace, send me every page of Miss Wycliffe's specimen catalogue. Do not send protection. Do not send money. Send the truth." She walked through the open doors before humiliation could become spectacle. No one followed her into the white glare of the terrace. By noon she was in the cottage she rented beyond the Merehaven orchards, comparing her father's notebooks with a copy of Honoria's petition that Dr. Amos Pike had obtained from a clerk in London. The preparation itself was simple in principle and difficult in practice. Willow bark supplied one part, dried flowers supplied another. The vanished fern did not cure fever despite Honoria's extravagant claims. A minute infusion settled the violent stomach distress that often prevented a patient from keeping down other medicines and water. Used without judgment, it did nothing. Used by someone who understood the patient, it could make care possible. Cressida's father had refused to advertise it as a miracle. Honoria had not inherited his restraint. At the bottom of the copied petition appeared the name of Vetch Maritime and Patent Investments. Beneath it, as a witness to the provenance of the botanical material, was Nathaniel Wycliffe's signature. Cressida read it twice. The first reading hurt. The second was work. She laid a sheet of transparent paper over the signature and traced the slant of the capital letters. It resembled the Duke's hand, but resemblance was not proof. She marked the date. On that day Nathaniel had been in Canterbury before a harbour commission, a fact reported in every Kentish newspaper. A knock came at the door. Dr. Pike entered without waiting for the maid, his round spectacles clouded from the change in temperature. He had delivered Cressida 25 years earlier, and still regarded doors as formal obstacles invented by strangers. "I heard," he said. "So did everyone with an invitation." "I meant about the petition." "Of course you did." He removed his spectacles and polished them. "You are not crying. Would it improve the evidence?" "No. It might improve you." Cressida's pencil stopped. She looked toward the window where the Duke's glasshouse roof shone above the trees. My mother cried for 20 years and was still expected to be grateful that poverty had a husband's name attached to it. I prefer a pencil. Pike set a folded page beside her. It was a physician's record in his own cramped hand. 3 winters ago he had treated 6 dock workers during an outbreak of marsh fever. The harrow preparation had allowed 4 of them to keep down water and broth. The 2 who had not received it had required longer care. It was not a controlled experiment, and he would never claim otherwise. But it established use before Honoria's petition. You may submit this, he said. Your patients' names are here. The committee may require them. Then the committee may receive initials and dates. I will not purchase my reputation with sick men's privacy. Pike's mouth twitched. Your father said the same thing, with worse grammar. Another knock sounded. This time the maid announced the Duke of Mirahaven. Nathaniel filled the little parlour in a manner his glasshouse had concealed. He had removed his gloves, and a faint line of soil marked one cuff. Cressida wondered whether he had touched the table after she left. He placed a leather folder before her. Lavinia's catalogues. All of them? All that remain? That was not my question. His gaze sharpened, not with anger, but with the discomfort of a man unused to having precision demanded of him. 2 leaves were cut from the winter volume before I knew it existed. By whom? I do not know. Honoria, Cressida thought, but did not say. Conclusions offered before evidence were merely prejudices wearing sensible shoes. She opened the folder. Lavinia Wycliffe had been an enthusiastic collector and an undisciplined recorder. Her pages contained pressed petals, sketches of headlands, weather remarks, names of sailors, and numbered references to specimens that had never reached Mirahaven. Your signature appears on Lady Honoria's petition, Cressida said. I signed a declaration last year confirming that Lavinia's cases had been received at my harbour. Without reading the attached description, my secretary read it. Your secretary is employed by Vetch Maritime. He was recommended by Lady Honoria's uncle. That is a more elegant way of saying the same thing. Nathaniel walked to the window. I have instructed my solicitor to oppose the petition. On what ground? The material may have been improperly obtained. May have been? Improperly. Those words are cushions, Your Grace. Lady Honoria has affidavits. We need provenance, prior use, and proof that the preparation she claims is not the one she tested. We? Cressida met his eyes. For 3 days, until the petition is lodged. After that, I take my work to London and pursue it in my own name. You cannot safely challenge Honoria alone. I have not asked whether it is safe. Then I am telling you, and I am declining to be told. The Duke's jaw tightened. I can place this cottage under guard, prevent your papers from being removed, and arrange for you to remain at Mirahaven until the hearing. Dr. Pike made a small sound behind his spectacles. Cressida closed Lavinia's catalogue. You have just described confinement, seizure, and dependence as though the word arrange makes them kindness. I meant to protect you. Protection from whom? Honoria. Lady Honoria threatens my work. You threaten my freedom to defend it. I perceive a difference, but not the one you intended. For several seconds Nathaniel said nothing. A pulse moved once in his temple. State your terms, he said. Cressida had expected argument. His answer unsettled her more. The catalogues remain here while I examine them. Nothing leaves without a written receipt. Dr. Pike witnesses every transfer. You ask before bringing another person into the work. If your family reputation conflicts with the evidence, I choose the evidence. Either of us may end the arrangement, but all copies already made remain with their makers. And your safety? I decide what risks I accept. That is not an answer. It is the only answer you are entitled to. He looked at Pike, perhaps hoping age and maleness would supply an ally. The physician replaced his spectacles and studied a stain on the ceiling. Very well, Nathaniel said at last. 3 days, your terms. They began with Lavinia's travel volume from the year she disappeared. Society believed Miss Lavinia Wycliffe had eloped with a married naval officer. Honoria's newspapers had printed the suggestion delicately enough to avoid libel, and repeatedly enough to make it truth. Nathaniel had spent 4 years refusing to speak his sister's name in public. Her rooms remained closed at Mirahaven. Her portrait had been moved from the Great Stair to a west passage where only servants saw it, yet her botanical pages were full of life. She described sea thrift clinging to cliffs, tiny orchids found in wet meadows, and a fern with divided fronds and rust-coloured spores collected near a spring on an unnamed island. Beside the entry she had drawn a mark Cressida recognized, a small open eye. My father's mark, she said. Nathaniel leaned over the table. Your father's? He used it for a specimen whose identity or origin required verification. I use a closed eye when a claim has been confirmed. Their shoulders nearly touched. Cressida moved the lamp instead of herself. The next page had been cut away. In the binding, a narrow strip of paper remained. Under magnification, Cressida saw 3 strokes of brown ink and the end of a collecting number. She took a clean sheet and copied the marks at 6 times their size. This ink is not Lavinia's usual black. It is brown because it is old. All ink becomes brown. It does not all become the same brown. She opened her father's notebook to entries made during the same year. His iron gall ink had faded toward grey. Lavinia's ordinary ink held a violet cast. The strokes on the cut strip were warm and rusty. Honoria's petition, Cressida said. Pike passed her the copied document. The annotations beside the medicinal claims had been written in the same warm brown. Nathaniel watched as she wetted the smallest corner of blotting paper and touched it to an unused flourish on the copy. She did not touch the original petition. Pike's copy would prove only appearance, not chemical identity. Still, the color separated faintly at the edge. Cheap logwood mixed with iron, she said. It gives a rich line at first and weakens badly in damp air. A ship's purser might use it. A botanical collector would avoid it because moisture destroys the notes. Vetch Maritime supplies its ships. That suggests a path. It does not finish one. They worked until twilight. Nathaniel sent for food and, remembering her terms, asked before the servants entered. The question sounded stiff in his mouth. Cressida said yes. On Lavinia's last surviving page they found a list of 6 cases landed at Mirahaven Quay. 5 had receiving marks. The 6th, containing fern specimens and medical observations, had been diverted aboard the Vetch packet Providence. The margin carried a single initial, H. Honoria, Nathaniel said, or Henry, Hugh, Harriet, a harbour clerk, or the person who copied the list. Must every conclusion be denied? Only the conclusions you wish to make before they are earned. His anger rose quickly. My sister vanished. Honoria's company handled her last case. You asked me to discuss ink. Ink is still here. Your sister is not. The words struck him. Cressida regretted their bluntness but not their truth. Nathaniel turned away. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. What do you require? The harbour receiving books, the Providence log, every letter Lavinia sent after leaving Madeira, and the name of the person who told you she had eloped. Lady Honoria brought me the report. That is not the same as its source. He left for Mirahaven before midnight. The next morning 2 porters arrived with locked ledgers and a note asking permission for Nathaniel to join them at 9. Cressida read the sentence twice, annoyed by the warmth it caused. He came at 9 precisely. By noon she had proved that the vanished fern in Honoria's possession belonged to the Harrow collection. Her father tied specimens with blue silk because ordinary thread cut dried stems. The knot in the petitioner's display case was his reverse reef knot. More important, the underside of the mounting paper bore the impressed lines of Cressida's original drawing, made when damp paper had been stacked beneath it. She placed her drawing at the window and aligned the veins. Every division matched. A fern may resemble another fern, Nathaniel said carefully, having learned not to declare. Yes, a natural vein pattern does not repeat precisely, nor does accidental damage. She pointed to a notch in the 4th pinner. In her drawing, a beetle had eaten a crescent from the edge. The dried specimen bore the same crescent. Beside it was the collecting number H47, partly scraped away. Nathaniel's face hardened. I will have Honoria arrested. For possessing a leaf? For theft. You still need to prove who removed it, who knew, and what claims were built upon it. If you move now, she says a jealous duke gave stolen property to a woman who expected marriage. His eyes met hers at the word. What I said yesterday is not today's work. It was wrong. Cressida kept her gaze on the specimen. A private apology could not gather words from 30 memories. Yet the absence of excuses mattered. Yes, she said. At the harbour books, Nathaniel's authority opened the record room, but Cressida's method found what his clerks had missed. Lavinia numbered her cases by journey, not by ship. A clerk had mistaken H47 for a harbour code and entered it beside a consignment transferred to the island packet, Mercy. The Mercy carried supplies among small islands off the Scottish coast before returning by Belfast. Its manifest listed no Miss Lavinia Wycliffe. It did list a Miss L. Wynne, assistant to a charitable clinic, travelling with 1 medical chest and 2 cases of plants. Nathaniel gripped the ledger edge. Wynne was my mother's name. Cressida felt the room alter around them. She did not elope, he said. The entry proves she boarded under another name. We do not yet know why. She left without telling me. There it was. Not relief, but the old injury protecting itself. Perhaps she believed telling you would prevent her leaving. I would have prevented it. Then perhaps she judged correctly. He released the ledger. You speak as if secrecy were courage. No, I speak as if control creates secrecy. The harbour master entered before he could answer. He had received a message from Lady Honoria demanding that all records associated with Vetch vessels be sealed pending a commercial dispute. Nathaniel could overrule the request as Lord of the Port, but doing so would make his break with the Vetch investment public. Merehaven's southern harbour required new sea walls. The Vetch family had promised half the capital in exchange for exclusive warehousing rights. Without the money, winter storms might close the port and leave hundreds without work. Cressida understood at last why Nathaniel had allowed Honoria so near his family records. Duty had become a chain he wore proudly, because admitting it was a chain felt like failure. Open the books, he told the harbour master. Your Grace, the investment belongs to a negotiation, not to Lady Honoria's ownership of my judgment. It was a small cost beside what might follow, but it was real. By evening, every merchant at the quay knew the Duke had defied his expected bride. The books revealed that the Providence had transferred Lavinia's case to the Mersey. They also revealed regular payment from Vetch Maritime to a medical wholesaler that had begun selling Vetch's Island Restorative 2 years earlier. The mixture failed often because it omitted the preparation method and substituted a common fern. Honoria wanted the Harrow specimen and notes to secure a broader claim before competitors exposed the failures. Cressida carried copies back to her cottage beneath her own cloak. Nathaniel offered his carriage, then accepted her refusal. He walked beside her through the orchard instead. Why did your father not seek a patent? He asked. The fees would have fed us for 2 years. He intended to publish the method for physicians and earn money from verified cultivation. He died before he could establish the greenhouse. And your mother? Sold most of his collection to settle debts. Most? Cressida touched the portfolio beneath her cloak. I hid the valuable drawings. He glanced at her. From creditors? From my mother's husband. Your father? My father died when I was 16. My mother remarried because poverty offered her no dignified choices. Mr. Harrow's successor promised safety and spent her small annuity within 18 months. He sold her wedding silver, her books, and finally the lease to the garden that fed us. When she objected, he reminded her that law and gratitude were on his side. Is he living? No. Nathaniel's expression suggested that death had deprived him of an opponent. And your mother? She lived long enough to believe endurance was a virtue. I will not. They had reached the cottage gate. He stopped outside it. You think marriage itself is confinement. I think a promise made where one person owns the door is not safety. I did not ask you to marry me. Despite herself, Cressida laughed once. You announced that very thoroughly. To her surprise, his mouth almost answered. The expression disappeared, but not before she saw how different he might look without severity holding every feature in place. He bowed. Tomorrow then. Tomorrow. Inside, Dr. Pike waited with bad news. One of the dock workers who had agreed to testify about the earlier preparation had withdrawn. A Vetch agent had threatened to end his son's apprenticeship. Another witness had received an offer of money. And this came for you, Pike said. The letter bore Nathaniel's seal. Cressida broke it while he stood beside her. The page inside instructed the keeper of Merehaven House in London to provide Miss Harrow with rooms, servants, and a locked workroom until the hearing. It further ordered that no visitor be admitted without the Duke's approval. The letter had been written 2 days earlier. Nathaniel had arranged her protection before agreeing to her terms. The next morning, Cressida placed the letter between them. They were working in the closed glass house because Merehaven held the remaining island specimens. Rain tapped the panes. Around them, fronds unfurled in patient green spirals. Nathaniel read the page and did not pretend confusion. I sent that before I came to your cottage. You did not withdraw it. I forgot it. Men with power often call an order forgotten when someone else still has to obey it. The house is secure. It is a beautiful locked room. Honoria is bribing witnesses. Then protect the witnesses. Do not hide me. If she ruins your name before the committee, the evidence may never be heard. And if I accept that my credibility depends on remaining invisible until you present me, she has already proved her argument. Nathaniel paced to the end of the table. Lavinia vanished because no one guarded her. Did she? He stopped. Cressida drew Lavinia's catalogue toward her. Or did she vanish because everyone guarding her demanded the right to decide what she could know and where she could go? You know nothing of it. Then tell me. His face closed. This is not relevant. It governs every decision you make. It is relevant. The rain strengthened. Water ran down the glass and divided his reflection into dark fragments. Lavinia was 22, he said at last. She wished to train with a physician's charitable mission. My father refused. After he died, she asked me. I had inherited debts, the harbor, 3 lawsuits, and a household waiting to discover whether I was weak. I told her the idea was childish. She left 6 weeks later. With the mission? I believed with Commander Vale. Honoria showed me an inn register with their names. Did you examine it? No. Did you ask the commander? He was at sea. Did you ask Lavinia? Pain crossed his face. There was no letter. Cressida looked down at the catalogue. Several pages had been cut out. A case had been diverted through Vetch hands. A woman travelling under her mother's name might have written to a brother whose correspondence passed through a secretary recommended by Honoria's family. Perhaps there was, she said. Nathaniel's hand flattened on the table. Do not offer hope as a theory. I am offering an avenue of inquiry. To you, those are different. They must be. For a while they listened to the rain. Then he took the London letter, folded it once, and tore it through the seal. You will choose your lodging. You will choose who enters it. I will pay only expenses you approve in writing, and repayment will not be attached to any personal condition. I have not agreed that you will pay. No. His voice held tired humor. You have not. He wrote the withdrawal in front of her. That afternoon, Cressida found the hidden message in the vanished fern. It was not inside the plant as a novelist might have arranged, but in the mismatch between specimen and catalogue. The fern labelled H47 had been mounted with its fertile underside concealed. When Cressida loosened the old paper guard, she found the true collecting number written beneath the stem. LW19. H47 belonged not to the plant but to a page in her father's field book. Page 47 described a preparation he had tested with Dr. Pike. In the margin, added later, was Lavinia's open-eye mark and a name, St. Bride's Dispensary, Innismuir. Beneath it appeared a warning. H. Vetch demands exclusive sale through Mirahaven. Refused. LW says letters intercepted. Send by Mercy under Win. Cressida read the words aloud. Nathaniel sat very still. She knew. Part of it, enough to hide her route. Innismuir is an island. Dr. Pike, summoned from the village, knew of the dispensary. A widowed physician named Mrs. Bell had established it for fishing families. Mail reached it irregularly through Glasgow. 4 years earlier, a fever outbreak had closed the island to visitors for several months. Lavinia may have stayed to help, Pike said. Or died there, Nathaniel replied. No one contradicted him. They sent 3 messages by different routes, one through the Admiralty agent, one through a Glasgow physician, and one carried by a Mirahaven captain instructed to place it only in Mrs. Bell's hand. Cressida insisted that the message asked Lavinia whether she wished contact. Nathaniel wanted a ship sent immediately. She is my sister. She is not your possession. If she is in danger, then Mrs. Bell can say so. If she is not, your arrival with a ducal crew may create it. The argument lasted an hour. He yielded with such visible effort that Cressida could not mistake it for passivity. Near midnight, while Pike slept in a chair, Nathaniel brought tea to the specimen table. He set down her cup without touching her papers. What would your greenhouse contain? He asked. The question was so far from the investigation that she stared at him. You said you intended to build one. Medicinal plants that can grow in English conditions. Verified specimens. Exact cultivation records. A place where physicians may compare what they prescribe with what is actually sold. No orange trees? One, perhaps. For vanity. And where would it be? Near a rail or a navigable road. Close enough to London for the society, far enough that rent does not consume the work. Would Mirahaven be too far? The old offer hid inside the question. His land, his permission, his orbit. Cressida sipped her tea. I do not know. I would need terms. He nodded. Of course. It was the first time he had not been offended by the answer. 2 days later they travelled to London for the Horticultural Society's summer exhibition. Cressida took rooms with a respectable widow in Bloomsbury and paid from the remainder of her father's collection fund. Nathaniel stayed at Mirahaven House. He sent no guard. Honoria had already filled the city with her version of events. Cressida was said to have invented a family claim after attracting the Duke's notice. The Duke was said to be suffering from guilt over encouraging her. Vetch's Island Restorative was displayed beneath a painted scene of healthy fishermen and praised as a charitable gift to remote communities. Cressida stood before the display and saw a dead child reduced to decoration. The label claimed the preparation had stopped the fever outbreak on Innis Muir. Dr. Pike read it over her shoulder. "Medicine rarely stops an outbreak by itself," he murmured. "But a story can stop questions." At the exhibition dinner, Honoria wore silver grey and received guests beside Nathaniel's aunt, as though the engagement had already been announced. She approached Cressida near a bank of roses. "You should have accepted Mira Haven's house," she said. "A woman in your position cannot afford to reject every kindness. A kindness that cannot be refused is a bill, and yet you continue to use his name, only when identifying the harbour through which your company diverted stolen material." Honoria's smile remained. "You have no original documents." Cressida felt the warning beneath the words. Her copied petition had been obtained unofficially. Her father's notebook established prior knowledge but not theft. The harbour books connected Vetch ships to the case, but merchants transferred cargo every day. Lavinia's testimony could unite the chain if she was alive and willing. "You appear very certain of what I do not have," Cressida said. "I am certain of what committees hear when a woman mistakes attention for authority." Nathaniel entered the room. His gaze found them at once. Honoria turned, her expression warming. "Merehaven, Miss Harrow and I were discussing gratitude, a subject on which she is not indebted to either of us," he said. It cost him nothing to say it in a corner. Cressida knew he understood that. Honoria did too. "The committee meets tomorrow. I hope you will not let private embarrassment injure the harbour." "The harbour is not private, nor, apparently, is embarrassment." Nathaniel's eyes flicked toward Cressida. She saw him resist the instinct to end the conversation by command. "Miss Harrow," he said, "do you wish me to remain?" Honoria's brows rose. Cressida considered. Yes, the single word changed the space among them. He had not assumed. She had not refused merely to prove she could. Honoria looked from one to the other. How touching! A duke asking permission of his employee. "I am not his employee," Cressida said. "Then what are you?" "The woman whose name you tried to scrape from a specimen." Honoria's smile thinned. "Tomorrow we shall see whose name the society recognizes." She moved away. Nathaniel waited until she was beyond hearing. "The committee secretary has received a complaint against you." "On what ground?" "Improper access to confidential shipping records and manipulation of a peer for commercial advantage." "Manipulation appears whenever persuasion comes from the wrong rank. I can have the complaint withdrawn." "How?" "The chairman owes my family a favor." Cressida looked at him. His expression changed before she spoke. "No, you are right." "Am I?" "The complaint must be answered, not buried." It should not have moved her. It did. The following morning brought a reply from Innis Muir. Mrs. Bell's message was only 6 lines. Miss Wynne lived. She had served the dispensary for 4 years and did not consider herself missing. She would communicate with her brother if he agreed that her location would not be published without her consent. A longer packet followed by separate courier. Nathaniel read the note in Cressida's sitting room. His hand shook once. "She is alive," he said. Cressida turned toward the window to give him what privacy a small room allowed. "She thought I would drag her home." "Would you have?" 4 years ago, yes." The answer came without defense. "And now?" He folded the message along its existing crease. "Now I will ask what she wants." Dr. Pike found sudden interest in the street below. The longer packet arrived at noon. It contained copies of Lavinia's letters to Nathaniel, each returned or never sent because Vetch agents controlled the island packet. It also contained an account of Honoria's scheme. Lavinia had discovered that Vetch's wholesaler diluted medicines sent to remote clinics while charging charitable subscribers for superior preparations. She threatened to expose the fraud. Honoria answered by using the inn register to imply an elopement and by warning that any public return would destroy both Lavinia and Commander Vale, whose name had been placed beside hers. Lavinia stayed under another name to protect the clinic and collect records. She had sent the vanished fern to Cressida's father because its false label connected the wholesaler to the stolen formula. When he died, the chain broke. The packet also held a pressed fern and a letter addressed to Cressida. "Miss Harrow, Mrs. Bell tells me your father is gone." He was the first person who believed an observation made by a frightened woman could still be accurate. "If you choose to use my account, use all of it. Do not let my brother turn me into an innocent child and himself into my rescuer. We both made choices. Lady Honoria made crimes of them. Cressida passed the letter to Nathaniel. He read it to the end. She anticipated me perfectly. She knew you. Do you? The question was quiet. Cressida looked at the man who had humiliated her, tried to confine her, opened his harbor books, withdrawn his order, and asked his sister what she wanted. I am beginning to. He did not step closer. Is that unwelcome? No. Something eased in his face. Before the hearing, Cressida insisted upon visiting the medical wholesaler's London rooms. Nathaniel objected for exactly 12 seconds. If I say the warehouse may be dangerous, he began, you will remind me that you decide which risks you accept. Yes. If I offer 4 men, you will call it a procession. A noisy one. Dr. Pike? Dr. Pike may come because he can identify adulterated medicines, and because I have asked him. Nathaniel considered the distinction. May I come because I have asked you? Cressida gathered the specimen case. You may. The wholesaler occupied a narrow building behind Blackfriars Road. Its front room displayed blue bottles and respectable labels. The rear yard smelled of wet rope, vinegar, and herbs left too long in sacks. A clerk tried to send them away until Nathaniel gave his name. The title opened the door. It did not tell them what lay behind it. Shelves in the packing room held remedies bound for coastal clinics. Cressida read the destinations while Pike examined seals. Innis Muir appeared on 3 crates, though Vetch's charitable report claimed shipments had ceased after the fever ended. Why continue sending a restorative to an island that no longer requires it? Cressida asked. The clerk licked his lips. Subscriptions were paid for the year. Then the charity serves its accounts rather than its patients, Pike said. Nathaniel requested the mixing books. The clerk refused. Nathaniel looked ready to issue an order. Cressida touched the edge of an open crate instead. This packing list records 12 bottles. There are 10. Breakage. Then there should be glass, waste entries, or replacements. You cannot examine private stock. You invited us into the packing room. His Grace required it. His Grace did not remove 2 bottles. She crouched beside the crate. Fine brown dust lay in one corner. The bottles had been packed in sawdust, but the missing spaces had been filled with dried fern fragments to prevent movement. Cressida lifted one with forceps. Its stem carried pale scales, the mark of the common substitute. Pike uncorked a remaining bottle and smelled it. More spirits than medicine. Spirits preserve it, the clerk said. Spirits conceal that half the proper material is absent. Nathaniel moved toward the ledger desk. The clerk stepped in front of him. For one dangerous instant, rank and fear faced one another like men at a narrow bridge. Do you have lawful authority to seize those books? Cressida asked. Nathaniel's eyes stayed on the clerk. No. Then do not. He stepped back. The clerk's relief made him careless. Lady Honoria said you would take whatever Miss Harrow pointed at. Cressida rose. When did Lady Honoria speak to you? He realized his error too late. I did not say she spoke to me. No, you said what she said. Pike requested paper and wrote down the exchange, then asked the clerk to correct any inaccurate word. The man refused to sign, but a warehouse boy and a delivery driver had heard it. Cressida did not ask the boy for a statement in front of his employer. She asked where he took his dinner. They found him an hour later at a pie stall beneath the bridge. His name was Samuel Fenn. He was 19, and his widowed mother relied upon his wages. Honoria's agent had ordered the mixing books moved to a Vetch warehouse that night. Samuel knew because he copied dispatch labels. If I testify, Mr. Gray will turn me out, he said. Yes, Cressida answered. Nathaniel looked at her, perhaps expecting reassurance. I will not tell you there is no cost, she continued. I can tell you what protection is possible. Dr. Pike can place your statement anonymously before the committee, but a court may later require your name. His Grace can offer work at the harbour, but the offer must be written without condition and must remain whether your evidence helps us or not. Samuel stared at the Duke. Would it? Nathaniel took a notebook from his coat. You need not answer today. The position will be entered with the harbour trustees before the hearing. Miss Harrow and Dr. Pike may keep copies. If you never speak to us again, it remains available. Why? Nathaniel glanced at Cressida. Because a choice purchased by fear is not reliable evidence. She felt the words wear praise would have felt less dangerous. Samuel agreed to describe only what he had personally seen, relabeling, diluted mixtures, and the removal order. He did not know who had planned the fraud. Cressida thanked him for stopping at the edge of his knowledge. On the return journey, their hired cab became trapped behind a procession of carts. Rain trembled against the windows. Pike had gone separately to lodge Samuel's statement, leaving Cressida and Nathaniel opposite one another in the dim interior. "You could have taken the books," she said. "Yes. They may be destroyed tonight." "Yes. Do you regret leaving them?" "Profoundly." She waited. "But if I used my name to seize them unlawfully," he said, "Honoria would make the hearing about my force rather than her fraud. More importantly, you told me not to." "Those are two different reasons. I am attempting to possess more than one." The cab jolted forward. Cressida's specimen case slid from the seat. Nathaniel caught it before it struck the floor and held it until she extended her hands. "May I?" he asked. It was only a wooden box, yet the question gathered every moment in which he had mistaken taking hold for taking care. "Yes." He placed it across her palms. "When this is finished," he said, "if it finishes well, will you let me see the greenhouse you build? You have already seen it. It exists mostly in ledgers." "Then may I see the ledgers?" "Perhaps." A ruthless answer. An accurate one. His smile appeared fully this time. It altered him enough that Cressida understood why severity had become his preferred mask. Warmth invited hope, and hope could leave. She looked down at the case. "If you see it, you may dislike it. I mean to admit women as students. Then it will be noisier than my glass house. It will contain more questions." "That is what I meant." She smiled before caution could prevent it. At Merehaven House they found a parcel waiting. The mixing books had not been moved to the Vetch warehouse. Samuel, after giving his statement, had warned a magistrate's clerk who held authority to seal the records in a commercial fraud inquiry. The clerk enclosed an inventory, not the books themselves. Cressida read the first page. It showed repeated substitutions and payments authorized with the initials HV. "This strengthens the chain," Nathaniel said. "It does not replace the plants, the shipping record, or Lavinia's account." "I know." And he did. He arranged the documents by source without asking where she wanted them. When he reached the table, he stopped. "May I add this to your sequence?" Cressida moved aside. "Here," she said. After the wholesaler's subscription accounts, before Samuel's statement. They worked shoulder to shoulder while the city darkened beyond the windows. Neither spoke of the smile in the cab. It remained between them, not a promise, only a small living thing that would not survive being seized. The committee hearing began that afternoon in the Society's library. Cases of dried plants lined the walls. The chairman, Sir Edmund Vale, sat with 6 gentlemen whose knowledge ranged from excellent botany to excellent dining. Honoria occupied a front table with 2 solicitors and a chemist in her employ. Cressida had been promised 20 minutes to present her prior use evidence. Before she was called, Honoria rose to address a procedural question. "It is regrettable," she began, "that a scientific body must examine a domestic misunderstanding. Miss Harrow was permitted into the Duke of Merehaven's private collection as a hired illustrator. Her duties gave her access, not ownership. Since His Grace declined a more personal expectation, she has removed papers, interfered with shipping records, and encouraged a physician to breach patient confidence." The chairman frowned toward Cressida. Murmurs moved through the room. Honoria continued. "No lady should be forced to defend herself against vulgar insinuation. Yet neither should rank be used to elevate an ambitious dependent beyond the evidence. Miss Harrow is, at most, a gifted drawing woman maintained by ducal indulgence. A woman cannot transform household access into scientific authorship merely by desiring independence." Heat rose beneath Cressida's collar. The insult itself was ordinary. Its danger lay in the committee's relief. If she was a disappointed woman, they need not examine the ledgers. If she was Nathaniel's dependent, every fact she offered became his quarrel with Honoria. Nathaniel rose. Cressida's breath stopped. "Miss Harrow is not maintained by me," he said. "She has accepted neither salary nor lodging. Her access was granted for cataloguing and is documented. Any suggestion that she expected marriage began in Lady Honoria's conversation, not Miss Harrow's conduct. It was accurate. It was insufficient." Honoria tilted her head. "Your Grace's loyalty is admirable. It is also the difficulty." The chairman asked Nathaniel to sit. He did, but his hand closed around the chair arm. Cressida was called at last. She presented her drawings, the impressed vein pattern, the collecting numbers, Pike's anonymized records, and the shipping entries. The botanists leaned forward when she aligned the fern notch. The lawyers leaned back when she described the diverted case. Then Honoria's solicitor asked whether Cressida had ever dined alone with the Duke. "The botanical identity of a fern is not altered by my supper," Cressida said. Laughter stirred, but the chairman allowed the question. "Did His Grace offer you a London house?" "He offered its use. I declined." "Did you understand that his protection might improve your professional position?" I understood that my work might improve his. The laughter was louder. Honoria waited until it faded. And did you not tell him that unless he opposed my petition, you would expose his sister's disgrace? No. Can you prove that? Cressida saw the trap. No one could prove an unspoken sentence. Honoria needed only uncertainty. Nathaniel stood again. This has gone far enough. The command cracked through the room. The chairman called for order. Nathaniel crossed to Cressida. We are leaving. She stared at him. I have not finished. They are not examining the evidence. Then I will require them to. Not while they speak of you this way. He reached for her portfolio. Not her arm, not her body, but still the work. Cressida held it fast. Do not. The room watched. I can stop this, he said under his breath, by stopping me, by refusing to lend my name to it. It is my name on trial. His fear was visible now, stripped of dignity. Honoria will destroy your reputation. She is doing so because men like you decide a woman's reputation matters more than her evidence. The words landed between them in the public quiet. Nathaniel released the portfolio, but the damage was done. The chairman adjourned the hearing until the following morning, citing disorder and the need to examine whether Cressida had proper standing. Honoria announced to the waiting press that the Duke had withdrawn his support from an unstable claimant. Outside, Nathaniel ordered his carriage brought. Cressida placed the Mirrorhaven archive key in his palm. What is this? He asked. The end of our arrangement. Because I tried to remove you from an insult? Because you still believe the answer to another person's abuse is your control. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself from watching me choose a cost you could not prevent. Rain had begun, fine and cold. People hurried beneath the portico behind them. The hearing is tomorrow, he said. I know. Where will you go? Somewhere you have not arranged. Cressida. It was the first time he had used her name without urgency hardening it. She wanted to turn back. Wanting was not consent. 3 days ago, she said, you told a room that you would never marry me because you believed I would remain near you anyway. You thought humiliation would make your boundary clear without costing you my labor. Yesterday you learned your sister was alive, and still today you try to decide which door I should use. I cannot teach you freedom while standing inside your command. I did not think you would leave. That is the problem. She walked into the rain. Nathaniel sent a message to her Bloomsbury rooms that evening. It contained one sentence. I will not ask where you have gone. I will be at the hearing and will not speak over you. By the time his messenger arrived, Cressida had already left. She went with Dr. Pike to the house of a printer's widow near Fleet Street. Mrs. Denby had published botanical plates under her late husband's name for 12 years and under her own for 2. Her back room contained a press, a stove, 3 cats, and no servant likely to report Cressida's movements to Mirrorhaven House. There Cressida prepared copies of every document. She sent one set to the Society, one to a solicitor representing the dockworkers, and one to a newspaper editor known to dislike monopolies more than he disliked women. She asked Pike to take Lavinia's packet to the Admiralty agent for verification of the Mersey's route. And what will you do? He asked. Finish the plates Honoria says are hers. For 30 hours Cressida drew. She showed not merely the vanished fern but the common substitute used in vetch's preparation. Side by side the plants differed in the arrangement of spores and the tiny scales at the stem. A careless wholesaler might confuse them. A trained observer would not. She also prepared a statement explaining what the evidence could not prove. It could not establish that the fern cured fever. It could not turn 6 patients into a universal claim. It could not prove Honoria personally cut the catalogue pages. Cressida would not imitate false certainty to defeat it. Meanwhile Nathaniel searched for her. He went first to Bloomsbury, found the rooms empty, and stood before the neatly made bed with the sick realization that he had mistaken proximity for permanence again. He sent servants to coaching inns, then recalled them before they began asking questions. He rode to Dr. Pike's London lodging and found it vacant. He went to the Society, where no one would disclose an applicant's address. For 3 hours he crossed London in mounting fear. Then he understood that finding Cressida was not the work. Believing her was. He returned to Mirrorhaven House and opened the files she had told him to examine. He copied her method, source, date, custody, inference, uncertainty. Without her quick eye, the labor was punishing. He read every letter rather than the summaries his secretary had prepared. At dawn he found an account marked Seawall Consultation. It contained payments from Vetch Maritime to his own secretary on the dates Lavinia's letters disappeared. A second ledger showed that the promised harbour investment would not be new money at all. Honoria intended to lend Merehaven funds already collected from inflated island charity subscriptions, secure the loan against exclusive port rights, and recover it through fees paid by the very fishermen the charity claimed to assist. Nathaniel had nearly surrendered a public harbour to preserve the appearance that he could save it. In his father's locked cabinet he found the original inn register report. Commander Vale's name had been added in different ink. Nathaniel did not need Cressida to recognize the difference now. She had taught him where to look. He also found an unopened letter. It was addressed in Lavinia's hand and bore a vetch packet stamp. His secretary had filed it among paid invoices. Inside, Lavinia begged him not to announce her location. She described the diluted medicines and named Honoria's uncle. She wrote that she would return when she could do so without being confined for her own good. Nathaniel sat at his father's desk until morning filled the room. He had blamed Lavinia for leaving because blame was easier than admitting she had accurately predicted him. He had blamed Cressida for refusing protection because refusal exposed the selfish comfort inside his generosity. At 9 he summoned his solicitor, the harbour trustees, and a representative of the press. The society hearing resumed at 11. Cressida arrived alone, carrying her portfolio and a small case containing the 2 ferns. She wore the plain brown dress she used for fieldwork. Honoria glittered in blue silk at the front table. The chairman announced that questions remained about Cressida's standing. Before he could continue, Nathaniel entered. Conversation stopped. He did not approach Cressida. He went to the clerk and laid down 3 documents, the original mercy log, his secretary's payment ledger, and Lavinia's letter. Then he faced the committee. "Before Miss Harrow speaks," he said, "I must correct a falsehood I created." Honoria rose. "Nathaniel, consider the harbour." "I am." He handed a signed paper to the chairman. "Merehaven withdraws from the Vetch Harbour investment and renounces the proposed exclusive warehousing agreement. I have requested an independent audit of all charitable subscriptions routed through my port. Until that audit is complete, Vetch vessels will receive no preferential rights." The chairman stared at him. "Your Grace, this may leave the seawall unfunded. Then I will sell the London house and open the harbour accounts to public subscription. I will not finance a public work with money taken by fraud from the people it claims to serve." Honoria's composure fractured. "You would impoverish your estate for a drawing woman?" "No, I would expose my negligence because it is mine." He turned toward Cressida, but did not move closer. 3 days ago, before guests in my house, I used Miss Harrow's dependence on access to my collection to humiliate her. I said I would never marry her, though she had never asked, because I wished to end gossip without challenging the woman who began it. I then tried to confine Miss Harrow under the name of protection. Yesterday I interrupted her evidence because I could not bear the cost of allowing her to choose. These were not misunderstandings. They were abuses of power dressed as decisions. No one moved. I do not ask Miss Harrow for forgiveness, confidence, or marriage. I ask only that this body hear her work without treating my rank as either its source or its disproof. He sat in the back row. Cressida's heart beat so hard that the specimen case trembled in her hand. Nathaniel had given up money, alliance, and the shelter of ambiguity. More difficult still, he had stopped before turning sacrifice into a claim upon her. The chairman cleared his throat. "Miss Harrow, you may proceed." Honoria's solicitor objected that the Duke's family letter was inadmissible hearsay. Cressida opened her portfolio. "His Grace's letter is not my principal evidence," she said. "Nor is His Grace." She placed the 2 ferns beneath the committee lamp. For the next 40 minutes, she did what she had trained herself to do when poorer people depended on richer men believing facts. She explained the vein patterns, stem scales, spore arrangement, mounting impressions, collecting numbers, and ink. She showed the prior use records with patient names concealed, and offered the originals for private verification by a physician. She traced the case from her father's garden to Lavinia, from Lavinia to the Providence, from the Providence to the Mercy, and from the Mercy to Innis Muir, and from the Mercy to Innis Muir. She did not call the preparation a cure. "The petition before you is false in 2 directions," she said. "It claims ownership of work Lady Honoria's company did not create, and certainty the work itself does not justify. The Harrow preparation assisted care in limited recorded cases. It must be tested honestly. A stolen formula does not become sound science merely because the thief praises it more confidently." One botanist examined the underside of the true fern and compared it with her plate. Another asked how a committee could trust an illustrator's interpretation. "You should not," Cressida said. "You should repeat my observations." She passed him the lens. The invitation changed the room. Honoria had offered authority. Cressida offered a method. Dr. Pike confirmed the medical records. The Admiralty agent confirmed the Mercy's route and Commander Vale's absence from the inn named in the scandal. Mrs. Bell's sworn statement confirmed that diluted vetch supplies had failed on Innis Muir. Finally, the society clerk produced the copy of Cressida's drawings deposited 2 years earlier for an unsuccessful grant application. The date preceded Honoria's petition and matched the impressions on the stolen mounting paper. Honoria rose before the chairman called her. "This is theatre arranged by a duke," she said. "Without his ships, his letters, and his money, Miss Harrow would have nothing." Cressida looked at Nathaniel. He remained seated. "Without Merehaven's failures," she said, "Lady Honoria would have had fewer opportunities. That is not the same as saying a duke created my evidence. Dr. Pike kept his records before I knew his grace. My father tied the specimen before I knew his grace. My father tied the specimen before Lady Honoria entered Merehaven. I drew the plate before the duke ever saw my work. Miss Wycliffe made observations while her brother was refusing to hear her. Powerful men appear in this history, but they are not the authors of everything that survived them." A woman in the public gallery began to applaud. The chairman silenced her, but the sound had already entered the record of the room. Honoria's final argument concerned ownership. Even if the specimen had been taken, she claimed, Cressida's father had worked briefly in a garden leased from a vetch cousin. Plants collected there belonged to the landowner. Cressida had expected it. She produced the field map. H47 had been collected on common coastal ground beyond the lease. Lavinia's later specimen came from Innis Muir. The preparation combined information, observation, and method. It was not a landlord's crop. The map bore witness signatures from a Coast Guard and a Paris surveyor. The committee withdrew. While they waited, Nathaniel did not approach. Reporters crowded Cressida. She answered questions about the plants and refused questions about marriage. When one man asked whether the Duke's apology had softened her, she said, "An apology is not a solvent. It does not dissolve consequences. It tells us whether repair may begin." Nathaniel heard. His face did not ask her to make the answer kinder. The committee returned after 2 hours. It rejected Honoria's petition and referred evidence of theft and commercial fraud to the proper courts. It recognized Cressida's prior authorship of the plates and recommended that any future petition be examined in her name. The society offered a modest research grant, contingent upon independent medical review and open publication of results. It was not triumph without conditions. It was better. It was work allowed to continue. Outside, the rain had cleared. Nathaniel waited on the pavement while carriages departed. "May I speak to you?" he asked. Cressida looked at him for a long moment. "Yes. Lavinia has agreed to write to me. I am glad. She has not agreed to return. Are you still glad?" Pain and humor met in his expression. "I am learning that gladness cannot require obedience." He handed Cressida a document but kept one hand beneath it until she chose to take it. It was a deed placing 3 acres beyond the Merehaven Harbor Road into an independent botanical trust. The trustees named were Dr. Pike, Mrs. Denby, a society botanist, and any 2 persons Cressida selected. Nathaniel had no power to revoke the gift or direct the work. A second page guaranteed public access to the harbor records used in medicinal shipments. "This is too much," she said. "Then refuse it." There was no challenge in the words. "Why Merehaven?" "Because the soil is suitable, the road reaches London, and the harbor receives specimens. Also because I would like you near me. The first 3 reasons belong in the deed. The last does not." Cressida read the revocation clause. "There was none. You prepared this before the decision, before I knew whether you would speak to me. And if I had lost, the work would have needed land more urgently." She folded the deed. "I will have my solicitor examine it." "Of course. And I will select the head gardener." "Of course. You are saying that too easily." "I have practiced." The almost smile appeared again, no longer rare. She did not forgive him on the pavement. She did not take his arm or promise a future because he had finally behaved as he should. She accepted the document for examination and returned with Dr. Pike to Mrs. Denby's press. For the next month, Nathaniel wrote once each week. His letters contained no pleas. He reported the harbor audit, the sale of Merehaven House, and his correspondence with Lavinia. He asked questions about drainage, glass prices, and the cultivation of the island fern. When Cressida did not answer for 9 days, he sent nothing more. On the 10th day, she replied. She rejected 2 clauses in the trust deed, proposed 3 replacements, and asked whether the Duke would permit a footpath across his orchard so village women could reach the greenhouse without using the estate drive. His answer came by return post. The orchard path is theirs. I should have noticed they needed it. She kept the sentence. Lavinia returned to England in September, not to Merehaven but to London. Nathaniel met her at Mrs. Bell's chosen lodging with no carriage procession and no demand that she come home. Cressida was present because Lavinia had asked her to be. Brother and sister stood 3 feet apart for a long time. You look older, Lavinia said. I was about to say the same. That would be because 4 years have passed. I know. He did not explain the harbour or list the costs he had paid. He apologized for the letter he had never opened, the questions he had never asked, and the certainty with which he had mistaken obedience for love. Lavinia listened. I am not ready to forgive all of it, she said. I know. Do you? I am trying to. She looked at Cressida. He has learned 2 useful words. 3, Cressida said. He occasionally says please. Nathaniel accepted this assessment with dignity. Lavinia chose to divide her time between the island dispensary and a new training program for women assisting rural physicians. Her sworn testimony helped bring charges against 2 vetch agents and the wholesaler. Honoria avoided prison while the courts argued over intent, but she lost the petition, the harbour agreement and the charitable board that had given her access to remote clinics. Her power was not ended by embarrassment. It was ended by removing the accounts, contracts and silence that had sustained it. Construction of Cressida's greenhouse began in October. The trust purchased the glass. Cressida paid for the first planting benches from sales of her published plates. Her name appeared on the title page in letters larger than the printer's. Nathaniel visited only by invitation. At first those invitations concerned drainage. Then they concerned Lavinia. Later they concerned tea. He learned to work beside Cressida without reaching for the task she had chosen. She learned that accepting a hand with a heavy frame did not surrender ownership of the design. They disagreed about costs, public access, and whether orange trees were an indefensible vanity. Each disagreement ended with terms, not silence. In spring, the first frond of the island fern unfurled beneath the new glass. Cressida found Nathaniel standing outside the open door. He had been there several minutes, waiting to be noticed. You may come in, she said. He entered. Sunlight lay in bright rectangles across the brick floor. Rows of labeled plants extended behind her, each with provenance, cultivation notes, and an empty space for results not yet known. The society approved the 2nd year of funding, she told him, because your report was excellent, because the work was. I stand corrected. You stand frequently corrected. It has become a position of some familiarity. She led him to the fern. The original vanished specimen remained in the society's evidence collection. This plant had grown from spores Lavinia sent from Innis Muir, freely given and accurately named. Nathaniel studied the label. No open eye. No, the identity is verified. And the preparation? Still under examination. It helps in some cases and not in others. We know more than we did, which has made the claim smaller and the work better. He nodded as though uncertainty itself deserved respect. From his coat he drew no ring, deed, or dramatic letter. He held only an invitation to a public lecture Lavinia would give in London. Would you attend with me? He asked. As what? As Cressida Harrow. I would attend as the man fortunate enough to sit beside you if you permit it. She took the card. That is not a proposal. No. Are you afraid to make one? Deeply. The honesty warmed her more than confidence would have. Good, she said. Fear may encourage precision. He laughed, and the sound rose into the glass roof. Cressida looked at the fern, at the path visible beyond it, and at the man who had once believed a closed door proved that people loved him enough to remain. She had not returned because he found her. He had stopped searching long enough to understand why she left. You may court me, she said. For 6 months, you will make no announcement. You will ask before arranging anything that concerns me. My work will not become a graceful extension of your estate. Agreed. You have not heard the final condition. I am listening. At the end of 6 months, I may still say no. Nathaniel's gaze held hers. There was sorrow in it, and hope, and no attempt to make either her burden. Then I will have had 6 months in which you freely chose my company, he said. That is not nothing. Cressida set the invitation beside the verified label. Very well, Your Grace. Nathaniel, he said, then checked himself. If you wish. She offered him her hand. Nathaniel. He took it carefully, not as a rescue, a bargain, or a claim, but as the answer she was free to withdraw. Behind them, the once vanished fern opened another green division toward the light.